Committee. Glad you all could join us. Before we get started today, I would like to take an opportunity to introduce my intern, Josie Teagarden, is here. If you would stand from K-State, EMA. So welcome to committee, Josie. Okay, first up, we have an informational briefing from the Department of Commerce on the Office of Innovation. And Trent Armbrust, Chief Strategy Officer, will be providing that for us. Welcome to committee, Trent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we have the slides up. We're going to get the slides up, but I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Trent Armbrust. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer with the Kansas Department of Commerce, and thank you for this opportunity to speak about the Office of Innovation and our efforts in this area. Next slide, please. In 2019, when we were developing the Framework for Growth, which is the state's economic development plan, the consultants, as they started to do their deep dive into Kansas and all the data around our economy, one thing that was highlighted immediately was the need to focus on innovation. And so when we developed the pillars in the Framework for Growth, these were cross-cutting pillars. So these were pillars that affected all businesses and all geographies in Kansas. Innovation was one of those four pillars. And I'm going to go into some of the data now that supports, and this is updated data from the, beyond what the framework did, that's going to kind of show you what the innovation ecosystem is in Kansas and how we're performing on a national and a regional basis, and to talk about why we need to continue to build on the innovation ecosystem and why we're the efforts that we have inside of Commerce around the Office of Innovation. So next slide, please. On this slide, which is slide 3, we're looking at the angel and VC activity in the United States. And the lines that you see on this slide represent the deal flow, so the number of deals. And then the bars represent the amount of money that's going into venture capital and seed fundings. And so what you can see is that the deal flow, the lines, is fairly flat, but the amount of dollars going into each deal continues to increase. And we're seeing that, that trend remain in 2022. Next slide, please. Now we're going to look at, where are the deals happening around the United States? We know that the coast are where a lot of the deal flow takes place. And if you look on this slide, there is a little sliver that says Midwest. That's where our deal flow is. And so we, not only is it Kansas, but we as a Midwest need to do a better job of promoting the great ideas that come out of the Midwest and make sure that those ideas are funded through venture capital and seed funding. Next slide, please. So now we're going to dive down into our region. And this is starting to look at deal activity by state. And I think that the note here is if you look to the far right, 2020 and 2021, our deal activity in Kansas is very small. And we're nearer at the bottom. And I think what you're going to see as we go through this data, that trend will, or that theme will continue to be seen as we look at the data. Obviously, if you look at our neighboring state of Colorado, they're doing an amazing job, and they've been building that ecosystem for quite some time. Also, if you look at Missouri, if you go back to 2006 to 2021, you can see that they've had a really nice growth in their venture capital deal flow. So, both of those states have made long-term investments in their innovation ecosystems. Next slide, please. Same basic data, but I want to do it in a bar form or a graphical representation so that you can see the magnitude of how Colorado is performing. And then also you can see the Missouri performance. If you go to the next slide, I took out Colorado from this data set so that we could better narrow in on our neighboring states. And I include Iowa in here because Iowa is in a state that our economy and our performance is often compared to. And in this slide, I've put in the trend lines for Missouri and Kansas. And so you can see that in that 2010, 2009, 2010 timeframe, Missouri started to make some concerted efforts in this area, and you can see the payoff there, that their trend line continues to increase. The gap between our performances is increasing. Next slide, please. And then this slide highlights, money follows deal flow. And so, again, you go to the far right two columns for the years 2020 and 2021, and you can see the dollar difference. And when you look at venture capital, which is what we're looking at here, this is outside money. A lot of this is outside money coming into these states. A lot of this is coastal wealth being invested in companies in Colorado, in Missouri, in Kansas. And so when we look at our deal flow and you look at the dollars that are coming into these states, this is one area we really want to improve on in the state of Kansas. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about SBIR, STTR. So this is the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs that is administered by the federal government. The agencies that conduct research in the federal government are required to set aside a certain portion of their dollars to support small business research. The goal of the SBIR, STTR funds is to help commercialize technology, is to move it along so that it is ready for commercial release or use by agencies. In 2021, there was $3.6 billion available in these programs. And these programs are competitive programs. So businesses apply. It's not done on a state basis. It is how competitive are your startups in your state in capturing this capital. And what's really important about the SBIR, STTR funds is they are non-dilutive, meaning these investments into the company don't have an equity stake, and therefore they make that company more powerful as it moves forward because it has a more commercialized product and it's better set up for investor capital.
Trent, if I could just.
Yes.
A couple of quick questions. Can you remind us what that STTR stands for? I got the first acronym.
Small Business Technology Transfer.
And how much did you say was available in 2021?
Between the two programs, $3.6 billion.
$0.6 billion. Okay, thank you very much.
So this slide shows, again, Colorado has done a tremendous job with their ecosystem. You can see this is the number of awards in each state, and I have the actual numbers down below. And again, the theme, Kansas is at the bottom in our performance of capturing these grants, and therefore these are federal dollars that would flow into the state. If you go to the next slide, you can see the actual award value. And Kansas in 2020 was about $10 million, Colorado $164 million, and Missouri about $31 million. So if you look at our population, is about half of Missouri's. But if you do it on a per capita basis, we're underperforming not only on total awards, but on a per capita basis. And that's what you can see on the left-hand side, or bottom left of the slide, is the per capita award analysis. Next slide, please. One area that was true in the framework research and continues today is our patent production in Kansas. We continue to be really strong in our patent production on a relative basis. That's really good news for Kansas, but the next step around patent production is commercialization of that technology. And while that data is not on this slide, that is where we have fallen down, is a lot of our intellectual property leaves the state and is commercialized elsewhere. And so as we talk about rebuilding this innovation ecosystem, part of that innovation ecosystem is how do we take our existing patent production, intellectual property, and commercialize that in the state? How do we help our entrepreneurs, our innovators, build those businesses in the state of Kansas? Next slide, please. So realizing this data, and again, I gave you updated numbers today, but this is a trend that's been going on for years now. We internally said, how do we put a bigger spotlight on innovation? And so we took some existing resources, existing personnel, myself, Wade Wiebe, who's our Director of Innovation, and we took those resources and said, okay, we're going to reorganize, basically rebrand around an Office of Innovation so that we can highlight the importance of the innovation ecosystem to the Kansas economy and also highlight some of the great things that are going on in our state. And so on this slide, you can see the bullet point. One, we had to reestablish that the Department of Commerce in the state of Kansas are participants in the innovation ecosystem, that we're a trusted partner. We're someone that people can call and get good information, and that we have the network to get them to the right people. And that we're a resource partner, and we're going to go into resources in a minute on how we're a better resource partner. And again, we need to celebrate and tell the story of the great entrepreneurs and innovators in the state of Kansas. We've heard some of those stories over time. We have new ones right now. We just aren't telling their story, and we'll highlight a few here in a second. Next slide, please. So part of the Office of Innovation was we launched the Kansas Innovation and Technology Enterprise. Really, this was an effort to put a name around the resources that we have in commerce and that we promote. And so we launched KITE, and underneath KITE are 3 programs, Proof of Concept Fund and Angel Tax Credits. We actually administer those in the Department of Commerce. And then the R&D tax credits, which we promote and is a tool that is authorized by this body. Next slide, please. So the first program I would like to review is the Proof of Concept Grants. This was a new program that we stood up in 2021. And it has, the goal of this is to help those small businesses get through that gap. Oftentimes when you're trying to commercialize a product, there's a need to develop prototypes. Sometimes there's molds that are needed for manufacturing. Sometimes there's tweaks that need to be made to your prototype because you've visited with the manufacturers and they're like, we can do this and this, but we can't do this, so I need you to adjust your product. And so this proof of concept is to help bridge that gap. And so these are maximum $25,000 awards, but they help you get to that next step. And hopefully that next step will involve maybe an SBIR award, maybe some investor seed capital, things like that. So we're trying to help you get to that next finance step. We have 2 categories in the proof of concept funds. One is for for-profit companies. The other is for faculty-led. So we're saying, hey, we've got some great ideas, great innovation coming out of our universities. How do we help our faculty as well? We had a total in 21 of 11 awards of $256,000. And one of the highlights that you saw in the annual report from the Department of Commerce was jog-along strollers. And so this was an idea of, okay, if you're jogging with a child in a stroller, you need something that's ergonomically easy to use. And so they've developed this new style of stroller, but they needed the next step in the manufacturing process in order for it to get to the manufacturing process. So they were a recipient of the proof of concept grant. We do have the proof of concepts are open right now. They close at the end of the month. We do it every quarter, so applications for this next quarter close at the end of March. Next slide, please. I'm not quite sure what happened to that slide, but hopefully your slide is clean on your sheets. That does make it kind of hard to read. The R&D tax credits have been a very powerful tool for us in the state of Kansas. Something that we do get national recognition for. I serve on a national panel. This was brought up that this is a competitive tool that other states wish they had. And so really, this is one that we need to continue to use and grow in the state of Kansas because this helps us recruit companies here, but also helps keeps companies here. And those companies that are here, it helps them grow faster. And that was one of the key highlights as we've done our innovation ecosystem research is we have to help our companies grow faster. That means they're going to have greater profits, more jobs, all those things that we want in our economy. And this is an area of our economy as we diversify, we need new industries and new growth. So you can see the performance of the tax credits there in this, well, not up there, hopefully on here. Okay, next slide. All right, the angel investor tax credits. This is another really powerful program. I will tell you as we visit with venture capital groups, angel groups, seed groups, and as well as businesses, this is the one that they talk about all the time as really helping them make a difference. You can see in 2020, calendar year 2021, 23 companies were allotted about $4.6 million in tax credits. And again, this tax credit program is a 50% tax credit that certified companies are allotted so many credits that then they can give to their investors. So that the tax credit goes to the investor, 50% tax credit, $100,000 per company, $350,000 max per year per investor. So this program, while in 2021 we saw a reduction in demand, that was largely driven due to the pandemic. And if you look at prior years, we were much higher. We've already seen great demand this year. I get the fortune of seeing the companies as they come through and we approve them. I've already approved 5. We've got 4 more pending. And so as those companies get approved or certified, we post those on the website. We in Commerce do not link directly an investor and a company, but we do put the companies that are certified and have tax credits available up on our website so that investors can find those companies. And then we work with investor groups, venture capital groups, C groups, and say, hey, these companies are on our website, they're available for investment, and we also promote this to companies so that they're aware of this tool to help them grow. And then you can see the benefits of the angel investor tax credit. The capital raised off of that $4.6 million in credits was $43 million with a payroll of $12 million. Next slide, please. So some of my conclusions about the ecosystem in general. One, we have to start more businesses. We have to increase our deal flow in the state of Kansas. That not only diversifies our economy, it increases the amount of money that flows into our state. And then those businesses that we do help start, we need to help them grow faster. We are in a highly competitive environment in the global economy. These businesses are growing really fast in other states. We need to make sure that we're in that competitive environment and we're competing at the highest level. Our entire capital stack in Kansas needs improved. VC gets a lot of the attention, but this starts from seed capital, helping those businesses just get off the ground, proof of concept funds, angel investor funds, venture capital funds, and then upon that exit, how is our bank financing, all that stuff. So that entire capital stack needs improved. Dollars invested per deal, I talked about that. We are seeing more money per business right now across the United States. We're seeing that in Kansas as well. We're in a really unique time where there's a lot of capital to be deployed. We want to make sure that capital is getting deployed and invested in Kansas. Patent production, I talked about that, of being really solid. Need to convert that into businesses in Kansas. And then the last thing is, as we've seen with Colorado, we've seen with Missouri, as we highlighted in that data, this takes a lot of time for us to realize the benefits of our investments in an innovation ecosystem. It pays off. It just takes a long time. Next slide, please. So what are we doing in the Office of Innovation in 2022? One of the things is we have started having regular meetings with our partners around the state. I highlighted on this slide SBDC, Network Kansas, the Kansas Manufacturing Solutions, higher education, groups like Technology Development Institute, NIARD, those type of entities. We're coordinating with them to make sure that all of our resources are aligned and we're leveraging what's already in the state. But how to make sure that we know what's going on, that we're sharing leads, that we're sharing companies that we're working with, so that we can make sure all of the resources in the state are brought to bear. Continue to grow the VC, angel, and seed capital funds. I visit with them. We want to highlight what's going on in Kansas to make sure that they're looking in Kansas. We're also working with several new ones that are starting up, and fortunately, they are focused on Kansas. They're also focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion investing. And so we're really excited about that as well, to make sure we're getting capital to those populations that have been chronically underserved for now decades. So we're really excited about some of the growth and the focus on innovation and the investments that are coming out of our local communities. And then lastly, there's a lot of federal and private resources that we simply haven't competed for. And so part of our efforts in 2022 is to bring new resources to Kansas, both federal and private, to help support our innovation ecosystem, to help support our entrepreneurial support network. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Next slide. My cell phone number and my email address are right there, so please feel free to contact me after this if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Trent. Did I hear you say that's your cell phone number?
Yes.
Okay, we will. I was going to say, hats off to you. Okay, questions, Senator Dahl.
Can you tell us where we're at with the Apex?
With the legislation has passed.
Where's that the company at? Where,
I too am under an NDA, but the conversations continue with the company.
Senator Dietrich, and then Senator Ware.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here and for providing a cell phone number. That's very brave of you, and appreciate that. So what is Colorado doing that we're not?
So Colorado, that's a great question, Senator. And I could spend a full hour on just that question. Colorado has done a great job of, one, being intentional. They have come out and they said, hey, these are our target industries. These are our target technologies. And they're putting resources behind those. And therefore, they have a myriad of programs to support that. A lot of them are acceleration grants to help a business in that industry grow faster. They also have provided efforts around the SBIR, STTR funding to say, okay, we know that this is where that funding tends to go in these certain technologies. They're helping businesses get those grants. And then they have also developed some of the incubators and accelerators in Colorado that we simply don't have in Kansas. So it's a whole ecosystem build there. And I would be happy to come back and give you a deeper dive on it, or we can visit about that. But they have been a long-term investor in that. They've also done a really good job of securing federal facilities and leveraging those federal facilities for the innovation that comes out of those, as well as their universities.
So if I might follow up, it would be helpful if you would prioritize. You know, we can't do everything. So what are one or two things that you think would be helpful for our state to be able to move us forward? Because I think we all want to see growth and development in those areas, so, but we can't do everything.
I'd be
Thank you.
happy to bring that list to you.
Thank you. Short list, very short list.
Short list, yes. It's that long, but I'll prioritize it.
Senator Ware.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, before I ask the question, I want everybody in the room to know that we do have vampires in the building today, folks who would be pleased to take a pint of blood if you're willing to give it on the first floor rotunda. So basically, Brenda asked my question. So how is this, does this plan and what we're doing mirror what Colorado is doing, or do we need to make some adjustments in our focus and our attack on this? What?
To be blunt, Senator, we need more money. But I know that's not the real answer. Yeah, we need to build some programs. And, you know, when we look at proof of concept, that was an internal resource reallocation in order to do that. How do we make that sustainable long-term? And then when you look at some of the acceleration grant programs that Colorado has, you know, those are big millions of dollars that are invested on an annual basis in a very intentional way. And so you get back to what are those priority technologies? So I'm just saying, for an example, let's pick robotics. And we say, okay, we're going to get really good at robotics in Kansas, and therefore we need to get really good at sensors. Okay, we're going to invest money in sensor-based tech companies, and we're not putting direct money into them so much as we're going to help them grow, we're going to help them accelerate their product, and that can be through acquisition of talent, that can be helping them secure the federal funding to help them accelerate their product, and it can also be how do we help attract the venture capital and the seed capital around those companies. So again, it's wrapping that around a company, and it can also be how do we help them discover customers for their products? How do we help them discover supply chain elements for their products? So it's all of those pieces, Senator, that Colorado does really well. And again, it's just that sustained support mechanism across a variety of programs that it's making Colorado successful. Again, I'd be happy to bring more details. I was not prepared to go into the details of Colorado's programs, but I do have it on my hard drive.
Yeah, I would be interested in that short list as well. If you could send that out to us, that'd be lovely.
Happy to do that.
And if you would, Trina, if you would send that to Connie, she will make sure that the entire committee receives that. Other questions? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Going back a little bit to Senator Dahl's question, I realize that there is ongoing discussions. I know that the Apex legislation we were told needed done by the 1st of February. It didn't happen, but it has happened. And this is a committee that it went through. Is there any update without disclosing personal or information or private information, private negotiations, anything that you can update this committee on as far as the status without giving us a company name? So I guess I would just leave it with you. We would like to, there are some of us who have been completely in the dark from the very beginning. All we know is we were told pass this, it's a great thing, and it has passed, but can you give us any update at all as far as we were told originally that there would be an announcement late February? We're into mid-March. Anything you can tell us?
Sure. Senator, I think I'll address that by discussing economic development projects in general, and this falls in line with that. And so I'll give it, Kansas, we did what we needed to do. Kansas was aggressive. We positioned ourselves to win. Companies make decisions internally, and they have a variety of decision-making processes and levels, and therefore each and every company has to evaluate the opportunity. And so while we were working with the company on one timeline, that company, through their own processes, has extended the timeline. And we see this on a regular basis on projects across the board. So, I applaud what this body's done and the aggressiveness that Kansas went after this project, because it showed we were serious, we want to win, and that we want this company in Kansas. It is now their decision-making process and timeline.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Senator Stephan.
Thank you. You referred to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Would you help me understand with some real finite statements on how ingrained in the Commerce Department and its rules and regulations that diversity, equity, and inclusion is?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. I think as we've all been made very, very aware over the last few years, there's minority populations, rural populations, simply haven't had access to capital at the same level as others.
Pardon me,
myself
could you
included.
kind of keep this as to how it's ingrained within the department itself?
Sure. And therefore, everything that we do now, we put that lens on it of, okay, when we're working with a seed group or we're working with a venture capital group, when we launch the proof of concept funds, we intentionally have a DEI component to that. And so we're being very intentional as we look at each and every effort of how are we addressing chronically underserved populations. And so it's not like a one-off thing. It is, how do we evaluate every program that we build now, especially around the innovation ecosystem?
Follow-up, Senator Stephan.
Thank you. Again, how ingrained is it written in your regulations? More to the depth, and do you make decisions? You pick one winner versus another based on those criteria, the diversity, equity, inclusion. You make conscious decisions. You pick actual people to benefit based on that.
No, we make sure that there are resources available that those who are chronically underserved can benefit from. They still apply, everyone still applies to the program, but we do have set aside in the proof of concept funds to make sure that they have equal access to capital. We have not, we're not changing, and we haven't gone through and written new regulations for everything that we do. No, it's an intentional action on our part to make sure that there is opportunity. Maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, Senator.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Are you also using ESG as a determining factor?
And you're referring to?
Environmental.
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure I understood your question. So when we evaluate on where we administer the programs, Angel and Proof of Concept, on the Angel funds, it's done purely on the criteria in statute. And on Proof of Concept, the ESG is not part of our evaluation criteria.
Any other questions, Trent? I do have one. I know you mentioned that intellectual property or patents, we are doing well on that front, but then the commercialization of those typically leaves the state. Have you dug into the reasons for that? How we can prevent that from happening outside of anything you've already addressed?
Yeah, Senator, I see twofold. Is one, we got into a mindset of how do we quickly get money out of the intellectual property, which means we're licensing it or we're selling it. So we've done a really good job of licensing it, saying, oh yeah, we've got this great technology, I'm going to license it to another company, and then they're going to develop it and use it and make money off of it. And so that became a mindset in Kansas. Also, we haven't had the entrepreneurs who feel like that they can successfully start a company in Kansas and grow that company that's based on technology, because I didn't feel like there was the capital here or the support services to help them grow that company here. So oftentimes they have taken that, and without disclosing any, I know companies that have chosen to leave Kansas because they felt like they had a better opportunity for success in other states. And so part of that is messaging, and part of that is actually building that ecosystem of resources.
And another question I had, Trent, is rather than try to beat other states at their own game, what is unique? I mean, how can we carve a niche for Kansas that is unique and separate? Has there been talks about that in innovation? I mean, that obviously goes hand in hand with innovation. What can we do differently? What can we do creatively in order to attract and retain businesses?
Again, we need hours for this discussion, but some of what I look at is I look at what other states have done well to say, okay, we don't need to create that wheel. We know it works. And so that's where you see us emulating some of the other states. As far as what our competitive advantages or some of our niche opportunities in Kansas, excuse me, is, you look at our aviation industry as an example. And what are some of the offshoots of that industry? So what are some of the tangential opportunities that come off of our core industries is where I see some of our opportunities. So, it's no secret down in Wichita, the MRO activity, the maintenance, repair, and overhaul. That's been a big opportunity. I know that's been presented here. Also, you have some of the hypersonics that is being developed, so that technology is coming off. We also have opportunity in the drone space, and it's the construction of the aircraft, but also the payload on a drone. So what that drone's actually used for. If you look at Kansas State University with agriculture, they were very strong in remote sensing. They know how to look at images and tell you what's wrong with the field. Well, now it's just how do we capture those images? That's changing. Those type of examples, the One Health opportunities, which is the merging of animal health and human health. You take the strengths of the animal health corridor, you take the strengths of the human medicine, pharmaceutical environment, and say, okay, as technology continues to advance in human and animal medicine, we're seeing those two industries get closer and closer together. And so you look at opportunities around biologics, cybersecurity. If you look at our framework for growth plan, we have the Kansas Competitiveness Project, which is looking at new industries. Cybersecurity is massive opportunity. And Kansas is well positioned for that. Our universities are NSA, we have several that are NSA certified. We have several community colleges that are NSA certified. We've got new cybersecurity companies moving to Kansas, and we've got national security assets. that are located in Kansas or in this Midwest region that we can leverage around cybersecurity. So that's another example. And there's a lot of innovation in cybersecurity that's taking place right now. So then it comes back to, how do we build the cyber range? How do we build secure facilities? How do we build SCIFs? How do we have those assets in Kansas to help us develop that? So I think we've got some areas of opportunity. And Senator, I hope that addressed your question.
Yes, thank you. In the time allotted, very well, thank you. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you so much, Trent, for giving us an update and on this, the Office of Innovation, and look forward to hearing more throughout this session and the following.
I look forward to your calls.
Well, we do have your cell phone, so that will help. So, okay, committee, now we will turn our attention to House Bill 2703. We had a hearing on this and would like to work that bill today. What is the will of the committee? I would entertain a motion, and I know we do have one amendment. Okay?
Madam Chair, I'd move that we pass House Bill number 2703 out, but we have an amendment.
Yes. We will handle the amendment. Do I have a second? Motion by Dietrich, seconded by Holland. Amendments, I know we have. So Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will ask Charles to pass out this amendment. This is something that we talked about when we were hearing this bill. It's more of a technical fix, and it's a conversation with all of the stakeholders on a certain group of employee that will be excluded from the My Reemployment Plan, and I'll have Charles, if you wouldn't mind, explain it, Charles.
Yes, Charles, if you would just, I apologize, give us an overview of the bill in general and this amendment. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. As the committee will recall, 2703 makes some changes to the employment security law. It's sort of a trailer bill to last year's House Bill 2196. First, there's a change to the definition of employment that was recommended by the Department of Labor for conformity with federal law. We're just changing enabling out-of-state government instrumentalities or to be able to make an election as a reimbursing employer, and all the bill does is change this state to a state in that definition. There are a couple of changes to the tables, technical changes, adding some minus signs, rounding some decimal places down to 2. And then there are some changes to the My Reemployment program as well. And I think I went through those at length, so I'll skip that. The proposed amendment actually deals with the My Reemployment plan, and as I understand it, this is an agreement from the principal stakeholders with respect to this amendment. And as you can see, what we're doing is just changing the language that addresses the exemptions for certain claimants from a requirement to participate in the My Reemployment plan. So we are adding there on the second page of the balloon some specific references to claimants who are exempt, and that includes claimants in the shared work program, trade adjustment assistance, and trade readjustment assistance program, claimants on temporary layoff with a return to work date, claimants that are currently employed or that no longer reside in Kansas, claimants that are current reemployment services and eligibility assessment participants, and claimants that are members of a placement union or claimants that are engaged in a training program. So that list is a list of the claimants that would not be required to participate in the My Reemployment program.
Thank you. Any questions for Charles on the bill or Senator Dietrich on the amendment? Senator Peck?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think I heard revisers say, and I don't see it in this amendment, that's the reason I bring it up, that we are going to round down or up some of the numbers to where there's only 2 digits after the decimal, or was that not part of this amendment?
That is not part of the amendment, Senator. That's actually part of the bill, rounding down. And that was, if you recall from testimony, that was requested by the Department of Labor for purposes of their system being able to handle that better.
Yes, Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I understand that, but on page 26 and page 25, we've got numbers that have more than 2 digits after the decimal. So I had heard during discussion that those words to have been changed as well, and possibly I misunderstood, but I'll stand down because that's not part of this amendment at this time. Thank you.
So, can I
Charles,
address that?
you may respond.
Yeah, so it's my understanding, and certainly conferees can clarify that if they wish, but it's my understanding that stakeholders do not want that changed. They want the 3 decimal places with respect to that particular table.
Okay, thank you very much, Charles. We will now address the amendment. Any questions specific to the amendment? Okay, seeing none. Senator, you may move your amendment.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I move that we approve the amendment as presented.
Do I have a second? We have a motion by Dietrich and a second by Holland to pass the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We are back on the bill. Any further discussion or amendments? Senator Ware.
Thanks. It was my understanding when we were hearing this bill that the 3 digits after the decimal point were an oversight that hadn't been changed. That was what I thought I had heard.
I believe we have someone here who can address that. Please state your name for the record. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Peter Brady, Deputy Secretary at the Kansas Department of Labor. And after this issue was brought up during Monday's hearing, I believe Phil Hayes emailed members of the committee to clarify that specific table that Senator Peck brought up with the 3 decimal places. That table is what determines what the average high-cost multiple is that places the solvency schedule for all employers. That is a calculation that occurs outside of the mainframe. So whereas the mainframe is calculating and assigning tax rates to every employer in the state over 70,000, the average high-cost multiple is calculated once for the entire state trust fund. Members of this committee that were here last year when we worked 2196 will recall that the average high-cost multiple is the solvency measure that's used by USDOL to determine if a state's trust fund is solvent. That affects a multitude of different things, including Title VII loans, but the gist of it is, if we're at 1.0, we're considered solvent by USDOL. The way the tax tables are written in employment security law, depending on how solvent our trust fund is, employers get an adjustment, either a slight increase in taxes or decrease. So if the trust fund is healthy and we're above 1.0, employers get a tax break. So that calculation only occurs once. That goes to 3 decimal places because it's not part of the mainframe. The agency wouldn't have any strong objection to changing that for uniformity purposes, but that table is separate from the tax and credit tables that we referenced or that were adjusted in the bill that we're discussing today.
Thank you. Any other questions or clarifications for Peter? Senator Peck.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On Monday, I asked Deputy Secretary Brady about the age of the, never mind.
In the interest of my continued employment at the agency, I'll decline to speculate.
He just does not want to let that go. Thank you very much, Peter. Any other questions, comments on the bill? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you do. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. Please be busy.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would like to move that we approve House Bill 2703 as amended favorably for passage.
We have a motion. Have a second? Seconded by Senator Holland. Now we will take the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes, so that bill will head out of committee. Committee, that is the end of our business for today. We will not meet tomorrow or Friday, so enjoy that time. And seeing no other business, we are adjourned.